Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. But today is the 19th of January 2024, and these are the stories that we'll try to understand, decipher, and of course have different perspectives in this show of ours. Today we're going to first of all talk about this crisis that has engulfed Pakistan since the last 3 days. Of course, we are talking about the tension, the escalation of which happened 3 days back, and since then Pakistan and of course the region is raising a lot of questions as far as to the reasoning behind these strikes by Iran, and then of course Pakistan retaliated and Pakistan struck back on terrorist outfits within the Iranian territory. We are also in the knowledge of a National Security Committee meeting that is happening as we speak. It hasn't ended, or else we would have given you updates as far as the meeting is concerned. But this emergency meeting is also happening as we speak to discuss the tensions between Pakistan and Iran. We'll be discussing different aspects of that. We'll be discussing the evolution of this crisis that began 3 days back. We'll be talking about the behaviors in Iran and in Pakistan, and the different statements that have come from the world as far as these tensions are concerned, and what could be expected now, what could be the outcome in the coming days. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the day 105 of the conflict war between Israel and Palestine. 142 more Palestinians have been killed as we speak. The toll has risen to 24,762. The United States in an official statement says that Palestinian state, the creation of a Palestinian state is the only way that the conflict could be resolved. But on the other hand, we've got Netanyahu, who is rejecting the US push for the Palestinian state. Will the US be able to exert enough pressure? Because as we know, for Israel, the US is more or less its main supporter. The telecommunications blackout is also happening in Gaza as we speak. This is the 7th day that this is happening, so of course we don't know exactly what kind of details could emerge if the telecommunication blackout is restored. This is going to be our second story. Then we are going to talk about North Korea that has tested an underwater nuclear weapons system. The test follows drills of US, South Korea and Japan. The state media says the underwater drone was tested off the east coast. South Korea has also reportedly called the tests a provocation. The DPRK also deploys new solid fuel ballistic missiles. Of course, there is also an escalation as far as tension in the region is concerned. Then finally, let's talk a little bit on the from the prospects of health. And I found this very interesting. A 93-year-old Irishman is as fit as a 40-year-old. Scientists are fascinated by the physicality of this 93-year-old Irish, who is also extremely muscular. Now, he is a 4-time world champion in indoor rowing and started working out in his 70s. So, you know, as they say, there's never any time to start working out and to start looking after yourselves. This is going to be our last story. Let's begin with our first, and that concerns the 3 days since which the region is engulfed in tension because of the Pakistan-Iran issue. And of course, we all know the background of it, what happened 3 days back, what happened 2 days back. And of course, now there are a lot of statements coming from the world over as far as this tension, this increase in tension, this crisis between the two countries is concerned. We've been joined by Syed Muhammad Ali. He's an international security expert in the studios to discuss more on that. Ali, thank you very much to have joined us. Ali, first of all, I'd like to understand from a security expert's point of view, the evolution of this crisis in this last 3 days. A lot of developments have occurred since Iran struck Pakistani territories. Could you give us a little bit of an outlay of what has happened in the last 72 hours?
Thank you, Omar. I think the last 3 days have been very tumultuous and turbulent in the history of Pakistan and Iran's traditionally very close, cordial and brotherly relations. And as has been pointed out by one of the former foreign ministers, they were extremely shocking and disturbing from Pakistan because we always expected Iran to reciprocate our goodwill and understanding and respect for all our interests, but particularly for our core national interests of national security and territorial integrity. So it was really shocking for every Pakistani, not just the state, not just for the government, then when they woke up and found out that in the middle of the night some missiles and drones have been launched, which have resulted in the tragic loss of life of civilians inside Pakistan. So the first day after this unprovoked, illegal act of aggression was carried out by Iran, it really shocked us. So the next day was marked by Pakistan, as you would expect any responsible, confident nuclear power to behave. So the first reaction was obviously diplomatic, which was based on strong protest, asking their Shardi affair to explain the irresponsible and erratic strategic behavior of Iran, and given a démarche, our ambassador in Tehran also reached out at the highest level within the Iranian Foreign Ministry to demand an explanation. But initially our expectation was based on a sincere, well-meaning and well-considered expectation based on a history of very close and cordial bilateral relations, that we wanted to give Iranian diplomatic leadership an opportunity to explain this irrational, destabilizing and escalatory act, and give them an opportunity to apologize, express regret, express solidarity and also sympathy to those families and people who have lost their loved ones, and perhaps express a commitment that such an act will never happen again. But unfortunately, it seems on the second day, this expectation was not timely or adequately met, which forced Pakistan to sort of consider a careful, calibrated, limited, lawful and responsible response, which exhibited our need to protect our national security and territorial integrity, also demonstrate our capability, which was not just aimed at Iran, it was aimed at the international community as a responsible, confident nuclear power. We can't be browbeaten, we can't, our sovereignty and territorial integrity cannot be challenged or threatened by anyone, and our nation also expects our state institutions and our military to be able to live up to the expectations that is reposed in them. So for these reasons, Pakistan carried out a very careful, calibrated, lawful and in exercise of the Geneva Convention and right of self-defense, attack on in a very careful manner. The target was very carefully selected, and it ensured that no Iranian government, state, IRGC, military or even civilian is targeted, and the only target were the misguided Baloch insurgents who had taken refuge in the Iranian territory and were repeatedly attacking Pakistan through terrorist acts. So that was the second act, to restore the confidence of Pakistani nation in our state's ability to protect our sovereignty and territorial integrity. That was the second. And then the day after, thankfully you see things change. The mood in Iran seems to have changed. The mood in international community changed. There were, I think, there was a visible, clear and positive de-escalatory signals which I must recognize and appreciate from Tehran and also their diplomat in Islamabad at various levels and channels. You see some senior diplomats from the Iranian Foreign Ministry, their ambassador reaching out to their counterparts, and you see some bit of Twitter diplomacy as well in the public domain, and there were exchange of phone calls at the foreign minister level. So these things at the optics are healthy and positive and reassuring sign that there is a mutual desire not to escalate the tensions any further, manage it and restore and repair a peaceful, cordial, harmonious bilateral relationship based on respect for each other's sovereignty, based on understanding, trust and responsibility as well. So that is how things are, and let me recognize a useful, timely, reconciliatory, diplomatic role of international community and our common friends. Whether it is the UN Secretary General at the international level, whether it is US, whether it is China, whether it is Turkey, all these countries have expressed their concern and the desire that the bilateral relations between these two countries are restored and repaired in a timely, amicable manner to ensure that no further harm to international and regional peace and security comes.
Speaking of the two countries, how do you compare the attitude or behavior of the Pakistani or the Iranian people under this current crisis? What have been the statements that you've seen online, and what is the current mood as far as these two countries are concerned since the last 3 days?
I think that's a very important question. If you can quickly compare and contrast the Pakistani behavior and the Iranian behavior in the last 3 days in 3 domains: the diplomatic behavior, the expression in the media and information domain, and thirdly, the military and the strategic behavior. I think the diplomatic behavior is perhaps the most important, and you see that first off, let me recognize and express my concern that on the first day when the Iranian foreign minister met our prime minister in Davos, on the day their special envoy on Afghanistan called on to our interim foreign minister, it was unfortunate that Iran chose the same day to launch that unprovoked aggression against Pakistan. So that timing also sent a very bad signal in Pakistani corridors of power, that on one hand you are engaging Pakistani political and diplomatic leadership and discussing progress, cooperation, managing, stabilizing Afghanistan, and then it is followed after a few hours by an unprovoked illegal attack, an act of aggression against Pakistan. So that really hurt us deeply. And so on the other side, in the second day, you see a contrasting, very responsible diplomatic behavior from Pakistan, giving the Iranians counterparts an opportunity to explain their behavior, why it has happened, what do you want, why didn't you contact us, you have so many. You look at the wording of the first statement, there was an expression of shock there, manifested in that paragraph, which highlights why didn't you, even if you had some concern, why didn't you talk to us through so many channels? We have intelligence channel, we have military channel, we have diplomatic channel, we have political channel.
We were doing drills together.
Exactly,
at the same time.
And at that time, Pakistan Navy and Iranian Navy were doing joint exercises. It was, I think it must be embarrassing and shocking for the Iranian naval officers that on one side this is going on, and on the other side we are learning how to fight and combat our common enemies in the maritime domain. So that was very shocking. Now quickly coming to the information domain, I must recognize that for domestic consumption I noticed some irresponsible narrative within the domestic media of Iran, but in contrast, most of the narrative that you witness in Pakistani media was characterized by shock, awe and disappointment. However, I must point out very importantly, our common enemies were the ones who made sure that this unfortunate episode of crisis was optimally exploited to deepen a wedge, to draw a wedge and to further harm our bilateral ties. And it was instantaneously visible that most Indian media, Indian accounts, including the statement from their external affairs, ensured that the mistrust is exploited and deepened and further highlighted to harm our bilateral relations. And I hope the ideological, political and diplomatic leadership of Iran recognizes and identifies those countries whose information domain, whose media, whose foreign office spokesperson tried to deepen the mistrust and create problems between us and use this as an opportunity. So that was the information domain. Coming to the third, this is the military domain. I think on one side there is a clear violation of international law, of bilateral agreements and UN Charter, and an unprovoked act of aggression against Pakistan, which also unfortunately led to the tragic loss of civilian life as well. In contrast, you see a lawful exercise of UN Charter and Geneva Convention, use of right of self-defense. The targeting is lawful, non-discriminatory use of force, and also ensuring that no Iranian citizen, official, state, employee or is harmed in any way or form. And I must acknowledge that the Iranian official statement from their foreign office clearly recognized that fact, that no Iranian has lost his life, which is a reflection of the Iranian acknowledgement of the professional competence and responsible strategic behavior of Pakistani military and armed forces. And the third aspect is that the type of weapons which were used is also representing how responsible and careful Pakistan was to ensure that their sovereignty and airspace is not violated. Mostly the weapons used were standoff weapon system, and delivery vehicles were, they did not physically go inside and to violate the airspace of Iran. And there was no collateral damage, and I think it's a textbook case of being very responsible, careful, swift and masterly and responsible use of air power, which I think is a classic case of responsible, careful, calibrated and timely use of air power in defense of Pakistan's sovereignty and national security. And I think it's an improvement technologically, operationally, over what we demonstrated in case of Swift-Retort as well.
All right. Now the National Security Committee is meeting as we speak. This is an emergency meeting concerning the tensions between Pakistan and Iran. What are the expectations? What could be discussed? Of course, we understand that the whole scenario is going to be discussed, but what could be the outcome of this meeting as far as the whole security apparatus that is together as we speak discussing this current crisis? What is Pakistan's point of view to move forward?
I think I haven't seen the formal statement so far, and we are still awaiting that. But based on my understanding, I think there are three things which are definitely going to be part of the agenda. First, I think the very lawful, responsible, credible and effective role of Pakistani armed forces in restoring the confidence of Pakistani nation, the expectations of the international community in protecting and defending our sovereignty and national security will be appreciated. That is the first and most important thing. Secondly, I am sure there is going to be a clear and unanimous desire to restore peace, security and stability and repair this turbulent and recover from this turbulent phase of historically very close, cordial, harmonious bilateral Pak-Iran relations. And no effort or stone will remain unturned, and all channels will be used, and let me tell you, are being used to ensure this crisis is immediately diffused and we move on after this unfortunate episode to resume normal, mutually beneficial, peaceful and cordial relations. Thirdly, I think those international friends, whether it's United Nations Security Secretary General or countries like China, countries like Turkey, countries like Russia, countries like US, all those countries, all our common friends who have helped manage and mitigate this crisis, I'm sure they have to be appreciated by both Tehran and Pakistan to ensure that all this misperception, this unfortunate episode is, we can move beyond that as soon as possible. However, and let me acknowledge and appreciate the statements coming out of Tehran, particularly in the last 20 hours or so, are reconciliatory, positive, constructive. We must appreciate and acknowledge that. However, I think actions speak louder than words. What the Iranian diplomats are saying is really respectable and important for us. However, whether their military organizations, whether IRGC and other state organs of the Iranian state reciprocate and share that desire to achieve peace, durable peace, and act responsibly and desist from any such act in future is something which is a very logical, rational and important expectation from Pakistan that we need to walk the talk.
All right. Last question. We're a bit short of time, but I'd like to talk about this tweet by the Embassy of Iran in Pakistan that says that, and this was a very recent tweet, the two brotherly, friendly and neighborly countries of Iran and Pakistan have always supported each other in different arena and hard times during the history, with common threats and interests, all out potentialities and opportunities. The bilateral ties don't tolerate any lag and delay. How do you term this statement?
I think the last sentence is perhaps the most interesting for me. I think there is a sense of urgency in repairing the ties and timely and amicable de-escalation of crisis. But I would like to tell my Iranian friends that I hope the current readiness level, the force posture of their military and their military behavior needs to be reciprocate this diplomatic expression which seeks normal, cordial, respectful, mutually beneficial ties. And again I reiterate, I really welcome such sentiments and I respect and appreciate them. However, I hope and I genuinely desire that all the elements of Iranian national power, all the institutions, all the organs of the state should share and demonstrate verifiably this diplomatic overture so that from now on our relations are based not just on love, close, cordial, historic relations, but trust as well.
I think that's very important and a very apt way to close our conversation. Thank you very much, Syed Muhammad Ali, an international security expert who have joined us, who have talked to us about this crisis and what could be the way forward. But of course, as you said, the sentiments that have been emanating from the Iranian side and also from the Pakistani side seem to go in a very positive direction. Let's hope, as you said, all the institutions are on the same wavelength when it comes to these sentiments. Let's come to our second story, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns day 105 of the Palestine-Israel conflict. And of course, we all know how the developments have been going on as we speak. A lot of important things have been going on. The United States, for example, says that there's no way to solve the Gaza conflict without a Palestinian state. But the fact remains that Netanyahu doesn't seem to be echoing the same sentiment as far as this is concerned. At the same time, we are also seeing a lot of other important events that are happening in Palestine, a near total communications blackout, families of captives in Gaza blocking Ayalon highway in Tel Aviv, Israeli siege of Tulkarem in the occupied West Bank, 5 people being killed by the Israeli airstrike on a resident building west of Khan Yunus in southern Gaza, Israeli airstrike in an apartment block near Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza City today, killing 12 people and injuring several more. The Palestinian Foreign Ministry accusing Israel of committing 15 massacres, killing 172 people in 24 hours under the cover of a communications blackout in Gaza. The United States Central Command confirming reports of an attack on a US-owned vessel in the Red Sea on Thursday, but says the ship was not damaged. Israeli forces in northern Gaza calling in Air Force strikes on several locations on Thursday against Palestinian fighters, according to the Institute for the Study of War and the Critical Theatres project. Now, to discuss all of that and more, we have a very eminent guest with us, and of course we'll be highlighting and discussing different aspects of what is going on as far as this 105th day of the crisis, of this war, of this conflict between both the countries is concerned. Thank you very much, Barrister Syed, to have joined us, to have come all the way to the studios. Barrister Syed, I'd like to understand one thing. First of all, I'd like to begin with a statement by the US, which says there is no way to solve Israel's long-term security challenges in the region and the short-term challenges of rebuilding Gaza without the establishment of a Palestinian state. This is a very strong statement. We've all heard in the past how the US has very strongly backed Israel on various occasions. Now it's talking openly through official channels of a two-state solution, of a Palestinian state. This was, of course, stated by the US State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller. Do you feel, seeing the Israeli aggression, whether the US will be able to broker this deal this time?
Omar, as far as US and other international leaders and the allies were concerned, from the beginning of this fight and conflict, they all acted as advocates of Israel. But with the passage of the time, when they realize about the backlash from the world, from the people, and especially the genocide, which is really they are committing actually on every daily basis. So I think now US is taking a neutral side, and I strongly believe that as far as humanitarian aid and other concerns if we consider that, it looks like a long dark tunnel, and it is very important for the world leaders, including US, to consider that this genocide will not only haunt them and their countries, even their generations to come as well.
That is so true. I agree with you on that, but maybe this realization is coming later, but better late than never, as we say. There is a near total telecommunications blackout in the Gaza Strip that has entered its 7th day. The Palestinian authorities have time and again said that the Israelis have used this blackout to kill more and more people because, of course, the information is not properly getting out, so we don't exactly know the numbers as far as the casualties are concerned. How can help reach if countries don't even know what is happening in Palestine with this blackout?
The reason of this blackout by Israel is not to spread the information, because recently we have seen the video yesterday on all international media, the way Israeli forces in Gaza on soil were making videos and laughing and considering it as a joke was pathetic. And obviously that black face got to reveal to the world in reality what Israel has done actually, suppressing innocent children and women, killing them directly using phosphorus acid is not acceptable anywhere across the globe.
Agreed. The US State Department says support for Israel remains ironclad, despite the Israeli Prime Minister rejecting US stance on establishment of a Palestinian state. I just started with the comment by Matthew Miller, and now we come back to the support for Israel that remains ironclad. We also know the condition as far as the Khan Yunus Nasser hospital is concerned, which has become unbearable as far as many of the doctors who are working there is concerned. Shouldn't the countries that support Israel, starting with the US and the others, wield pressure on it so for at least for it to not target the civilians, the civilian places, the hospitals, the educational institutions, the universities, the mosques? Why are they being given such a free rein?
All right, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is complex and long-standing, with the deep-rooted humanitarian, political and historical dimension. As far as the United States is concerned, United States has traditionally been an ally of Israel since very long, and that is their narrative in terms of ironclad, because that is a part of their foreign policy as well. Very important thing, the sport is based on various factors, democratic values and their strategic interest in the Middle East, and very importantly, their historic ties. As far as you gave the reference of Khan Yunis Hospital, the rise of ethical and humanitarian question raises for the world to consider that what Israel is doing, not letting people even to get proper treatment through these hospitals and all.
But there's not even medicine. I mean, doctors are forced to amputate their own children just by using salt.
When international diplomacy is concerned, the very pivotal element that your relation, the relation between two countries and the interest between two countries and international legal framework, pressure on Israel can be applied through diplomatic channels, public statements and engagement in at different international forums, for instance ICJ and ICC.
You know, you speak of ICJ and ICC, 2 days deliberations at the ICJ have ended. We are awaiting the results as to what will happen. Now also there is a referral to the International Criminal Court on the situation in the state of Palestine by Chile and Mexico also, that confirms the urgent need for the court to fulfill its mandate to deter, investigate, prosecute the most serious crime of concern for the international community at this time. It is what's happening in Palestine. How do you see this? Do you feel the ICJ, the ICC combined could exert enough pressure, if not directly on Israel, then indirectly through all of its supporters, so that the complete attitude as far as this conflict is concerned changes for the better?
The International Criminal Court is to investigate and on the grounds of a reasonable evidences to prosecute individual and the states as well. But the effectiveness of the International Criminal Court has been subject to debate and criticism as well. Some argue that it plays a very crucial role, holding perpetrator accountable in terms of countries and people. But on the other hand, some criticize that there are limitations. As far as limitations are concerned, I would like to give an example of Africa, especially enforcing arrest warrants in Africa and the limitations of ICC the world has experienced and witnessed back in the days. In last 24 years, almost, I don't think so, ICC gave any decision on genocide or war crimes in terms of prosecuting a state directly.
But I mean, I feel even if there is not a direct prosecution or persecution of a state, but at the end of the day, it does exert some kind of a moral or other pressure, directly or indirectly, on the perpetrator and on those who are supporting the country. Now, the executive director of the United Nations Children's Fund, after visiting Gaza, says that he has warned the children in the enclave are facing pervasive hunger, disease, and describes this situation as the worst that he has ever witnessed. We all also know that 10,000 plus children have lost their lives. We also know that the thousands of children have been amputated and now will be leading lives of a handicap. And then there are the children who are being denied the medicine, there are the children who are being denied the food. What is all the situation leading up to?
All right. As far as humanitarian aid is concerned, we have witnessed that mediated agreement between by Qatar and France has recently executed, and that supplied almost 146 trucks carrying humanitarian aid entered Israel-controlled place called Kerem Abu Salim, crossing Kerem Shalom. Out of that, only 48 trucks entered Gaza, Rafah crossing with Egypt, only carrying food and medical supplies. It's almost 1.9 million Palestinians were displaced. These 48 trucks and food supplies are not sufficient. And you recently mentioned about children are suffering, women are suffering, they don't have medical facilities. I recently came across one article in Telegraph early in the morning that women expecting with children, pregnant women are dying from starvation. So I think this is a very shameful moment for the world to witness.
Indeed, and the fact remains that not only is it a genocide, but it is also leading to many other complexities that our next generations will not be able to forgive Israel for. Speaking of Israel, Netanyahu continues to sell this illusion of Israel to the international world, to the Israeli street, for the public opinion, on different pretexts, on different arguments. He's trying to justify this genocide that his government is perpetrating in Palestine. But doesn't the world see his true face?
I think the world has seen his true face, and there's no justification of violations of human rights. There's no justification of genocide, war crimes. You know, there are always rules during war crimes. Never attack on children, old people and women. And Netanyahu ignored all of that. Umar, from the streets of Islamabad to the streets of London and to the streets of Turkey to the New Yorks, world has experienced that how people protested against Israel and the genocide committed by Netanyahu.
That is true. But, you know, speaking of Netanyahu as well, do you feel he's also facing an internal political pressure within his party or with his public? Because there are those who favor the Israeli stance, but there are also those who do not favor. Then there is an Israeli opposition that is hell-bent on removing Netanyahu. Adding to that are the cases that are pending on Netanyahu as well. Do you feel that the Israeli nation or the politics will be, once Israel and Palestine come out of this conflict, will he be forgiven? What is going to be Netanyahu and his war cabinet's fate?
All right, as far as forgiven is concerned, I would like to add here. Do you remember Iraq War? Do you remember Arab Spring? Do you remember Syria? Do you remember the British Prime Minister Tony Blair? And do you remember the Chilcot report, in which the British Prime Minister, after that report, he said that I would like to apologize to invade Iraq. I had a wrong intelligence. So how British public reacted and how British public demanded, especially the families of the British soldiers, to prosecute Tony Blair in International Court of Justice. So and not to forget our neighbors and the fall of Kabul and how the United States failed in relation to Afghanistan. And let me quote here for your young audience: that Pakistan is the only country across the globe who has hosted world's largest refugees. So when it comes to Israel, Netanyahu and his cabinet, I think he's facing retaliation from the people who are not in favor of the genocide, who are not in favor of the killing innocent people, and especially phosphorus acid to use directly, which is a crime.
You know, speaking of crimes and speaking of the cabinet of Netanyahu, I'd like to also now refer to what his national security minister Ben-Gvir said. He calls for Israel's occupation of the Gaza Strip. Then says that Palestinians should be encouraged to leave the territory, and he says that in an interview with an Israeli television channel. How do you see this statement? Do you feel this is a continuation of all the other statements that they have been putting, like mowing the lawn? You know, it began with that, such a derogatory statement that began it all, and then all the other statements that ensued.
All right, as far as Gaza is concerned, it's a disputed state. Firstly. Secondly, Israel is unlawfully, illegally occupying that. And by attacking Gaza, I think Israel is not only in breach of international laws, international commitments, violations of international law and the national law as well. So this statement I would like to call absurd.
All right. There are so many things that are absurd and absolutely unbelievable when it comes to this Israel-Palestine conflict, but this is the reality of things. This is how things are unfolding as we speak. When we watch the videos, when we read the news of what is actually happening, it boils our hearts. And I know for anybody with a single ounce of humanity would not have dared to do what the Israeli Prime Minister and the Israeli War Cabinet are doing. Even today, for the Friday prayers, they were not, the worshippers were not allowed to access the Al-Aqsa Mosque. You know, of all things, there is a continuous physical, mental, and torture that has been going on the Palestinian people. Will it ever stop in your point of view? What is the boiling point? You know, because any person, you can only push something to a certain extent, then there is, to every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction, as Newton's law states. Do you feel that is coming?
As far as Palestine is concerned, and the act of Israel, which was not only illegal, was unacceptable, illogical from our perspectives, I strongly believe that the world and the world leaders are stepping back from Israel right now. And in terms of sport, let me give you an example of Syrian conflict. When Trudeau at that in that era tried to step back, he opened the borders for the refugees. Do you remember that? And on Christmas, on 25th of December, on Christmas Day, he went to the airport to welcome refugees, and that was a good gesture. And that was a gesture for the other world leaders as well, that like, this is someone else's war, we shouldn't be the part of it. And especially I strongly believe that now in the Western world, these Western leaders are facing retaliation from their public in England, in the United States, in Canada. So acceptability and again to stand on the right and wrong side of the history plays a very important role.
That is true. You know, at the same time, when we look at the casualties, 24,762 plus people who've been killed as far as we know, and with the communications background, I'm sure the number is much higher, and the 62,100 plus people who've been injured. When you look at the different, international efforts that are going on, whether it's from China, whether it's from the other countries that call for de-escalation, that call for, do you feel those efforts are reaping some kind of results?
I think a little kind of results, I can say that. And let me give you an example of that humanitarian aid. Now, when the rest of the world tried to provide humanitarian aid, United States started a fight with Yemen and closed the borders and not letting humanitarian aid to reach to Palestinians. So I think just a little help, not in any excessive manner.
But we need much more of that help. We need more of a push for ceasefire, and we need that ceasefire to conclude into the adoption of a two-state solution. I think that is the only way out of this current crisis. That is the only way out to diffuse this tension that is slowly and steadily engulfing more and more countries. Thank you very much, Barrister Nida Salam, to have joined us, human rights expert in the studios, talking about day 105 of this conflict between Israel and Palestine. Let's come to our last two stories very quickly. Raising with the first concerns North Korea. There are a lot of conflicting stories as far as North Korea is concerned, and of course the most damaging of it all as far as the region is concerned is that it is testing underwater an underwater nuclear weapons system. This test has followed drills which were done by the United States, by South Korea and by Japan. The state media of North Korea says that the underwater drone was tested off its east coast. South Korea, of course, there was a reaction that had to come. South Korea has called these reported tests a provocation, but the DPRK has also deployed new solid fuel ballistic missiles. So this is a deliberate attempt, I feel, to increase tensions in the region. Also, a lot of speculation on whether North Korea is preparing for war or not, because North Korea did declare that Seoul was its main enemy, now officially abolishing agencies dedicated to reunification and threatening to occupy the South during the war. What is all of it going to lead to? I mean, my guess is as good as yours, but let's hope, with all the different conflicts that the world is facing at this moment, we need less of conflicts and more of cooperation and collaboration and more of peace as well. Finally, let's end today on a healthy note. Now, for lessons on how to age well, we couldn't do better than to turn to Richard Morgan. This 93-year-old Irishman is a 4-time world champion in indoor rowing with the aerobic engine of a healthy 30 or 40-year-old and the body fat percentage of a whippet. He's also the subject of a new case study published last month in the Journal of Applied Physiology that looked at his training, diet and physiology. Of course, it says live well every day with tips and guidance on food, fitness and mental health. But the thing is that it gives rise to many important statements, and I'd like to share some of them with you. Exercise 40 minutes a day. This is what he is doing. Is he developed this fitness with a simple, relatively abbreviated exercise routine. Consistency. That is very important. Every week he rows about 30 kilometers, averaging around 40 minutes a day. So, of course, the 40 minutes exercise, a mix of easy, moderate and intense training. About 70% of these workouts should be easy. Another 20% should be difficult but tolerable pace. And the final 10 on all-out, barely sustainable intensity. Weight training also should be done. A high-protein diet, this is what he says should be done. We eat a lot of meat anyways in Pakistan. He eats plenty of protein. His daily consumption regularly exceeding his usual dietary recommendation of 60 grams of protein of someone of his weight. So, of course, an example for maybe many to follow. We have also here in Pakistan so many 80s and 90-year-olds who are fit as a fiddle. But I think it all depends on the way you lead your life, and we need, under the current circumstances, to have a healthy lifestyle, physically and mentally. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. Today's Friday. We'll see you inshallah on Monday. Have a wonderful weekend and stay safe. Allah Hafiz.